Time. So, good evening, everyone. Thanks for setting aside this time in your evening to join us. I'd just like to start by giving everyone an overview how the night is going to unfold. So I think most of us have already come in and gone over the Zoom buttons and how to communicate. Just the two main things that everyone needs to know, though, is that one, this will be recorded to be viewed at a later date, and two, if you have any questions or comments that come up during the presentation, please just direct them to panelists when you're filling out the chat box on the right-hand side. So after I have gone through the intros for our committee and the presenter, we will just go right into the presentation. Our presenter will cover, Chris, our presenter, will cover a number of key points during her presentation, but she's going to leave space between each section to get back to any comments or questions that come up. At the end of the presentation, you're going to see this brief feedback form link that's going to pop up in the chat window. So what I'm going to do is when that happens, I'm going to ask you to click on it, quickly fill out the questions so that we can continue to improve on these events going forward. And just be mindful that we're new to this Zoom world, so be kind. But we do take up positive feedback from all of you, so if you can fill it out, that'd be awesome. After we've done that quick feedback form, everyone's welcome to come back at the end of the presentation. If there's additional questions or comments for either myself, Chris, or any of the committee tonight, that's the time to do it. So I'm just going to jump right in. I'm going to introduce the committee. So you're not going to see everyone's faces tonight on the committee, but I'll let you know who's a part of it. So we had a great group of people that pulled this event together. I'm going to start by just highlighting that we have Marion Smith, who sits on our Richmond Mental Health Film Committee. She is a member of the Vancouver Coastal Health Partner and Family Advisory Committee for Mental Health and Substance Use. Quite the mouthful. They need to work on an abbreviation. Next, I have Talia Kleinplatz. Hopefully I said that all right. She's actually one of the other, I guess, facilitators, co-hosts tonight that's going to be helping screening any of the questions that come through. Her role is Interim Initiatives Coordinator for Vancouver Coastal Health, with also the Richmond Mental Health and Substance Use. And then we have Mary Carter. She is the Community Development Coordinator at Richmond Mental Health Consumer and Friends Society. And then lastly, we have my coworker Barbara Fee and myself, Pascal Gendral, from Pathways Clubhouse. So we both work in public education. Our department specifically does events like the one that you're a part of tonight, namely during Mental Illness Awareness Week and Mental Health Week, but also throughout the year as well. And I believe we had Belinda Boyd join us earlier in the chat. So she's retired from our committee, but she has been helping with these community events for 15 plus years. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Belinda. She has given us great wisdom and advice going into tonight's event. So thank you so much, Belinda, and for showing up to watch us. And then, yeah, as I noted, we've been doing this for over 15 years now. Obviously, things have definitely switched up from how we would normally do it. It's normally in an open venue at the Richmond Hospital or the library where we're all in one space together. But just to be on the safe side, we decided to do this presentation through Zoom. So thank you for joining us virtually tonight. Hopefully we can see all your faces in person when it's safe to do so again. One other person I will highlight is Mike Tibbles. I saw that you're also here tonight. So Mike is our Pathways superstar and Zoom whiz. He is amazing with technology, and he kind of held my hand along the way as we set up this event tonight. I'm no Zoom superstar, so I'm doing my best to try and pull this together. So he was very helpful. Thank you so much, Mike, and for joining us tonight. And now, without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to our presenter. So this is Christine Newell from the Lower Mainland Grief Recovery Society, and she can describe herself and her society in more detail. So I'm going to go on mute and turn off my camera, but I'll be here if you need me.
Okay, thank you very much, Pascal and Barb and Talia and Pathways, for inviting our We Society to come and speak to your group. I'll tell you a little bit about us, so you have a sense of, who we are and how long we've been around. We're a nonprofit registered charitable organization. We've been around for 30 years. It was started by a wonderful couple of people, one of them, Mary Ellen. She's retired from the society, and I kind of, by default, ended up running it. And what we do is we have a few components. The main mission of what we do is helping the bereaved. So that means we offer support groups for people who have lost somebody, a significant person, to death. And that's basically our primary mission, our primary goal. Secondarily, we offer we go out and do events like this in the community. We really want to help people in the community understand how to deal with loss. I'll speak a bit more about grief and why grief is related to loss in more detail. And so we go out into the community. We've done events for setting up peer support groups, for other mental health organizations, for emergency health care workers, and senior centers and things like that. So that's kind of showed up more in the last 6 months because quite a few organizations are reaching out because of what's going on right now in the world, and also because they want to get some more help with helping their clients and their communities. So that's kind of been tying us over during this time because we haven't been able to hold our groups in session, which we're planning to do in the fall. So that's the secondary part of what we do. And the third part of what we do is offer our own sort of in-house grief education workshops. And those are designed for anybody who wants to be able to help somebody who's dealing with loss, and all kinds of loss, not just death related, but all kinds of loss. And that's held once a year. We're holding a workshop coming up in a few weeks. It's 3 full Saturdays, very intense. It's educational and process oriented. So the people that come there are kind of working on 2 levels. They are there to learn, to help others, but they're also having a chance to identify what's going on for them and their experience with grief, because it really is an experience. So that is a little bit about what we do, a little bit about who we are as far as people involved. There's a handful of us. We're not huge. We work remotely from our home offices, and our groups are held in meeting rooms in churches because the fees are very, very reasonable. And we all come to this work because of our own losses. It's not like we woke up one day and went, wait, I want to be a grief facilitator, a grief worker. We all have had some significant losses. Almost everybody in the society has lost somebody by death that was significant to them. And many people have experienced other losses. And that's part of why I like to get involved with people identifying the grief that can happen for other types of losses that are not death. Because that's where my world has been. My whole life has been a lot of non-death related losses, and the death ones as well. In this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on a few sort of key points. I'm going to give a little space if you have any questions after each one. It is content heavy, but I'm going to try not to go too, to overload you. And there'll be some handouts that will be emailed to you afterwards. And we're going to be basically exploring the landscape of loss. So the title of this presentation is Navigating Loss and Transition, which is a great kind of, when you think of navigation, you think of going out into the world, and exploring is also part of what we're going to be doing with this presentation tonight. And so we're looking at death-related loss, health, relationships, social, lifestyle, job, security, role, and the spectrum of emotions that can come from different kinds of experiences and difficult times. We're also I'm going to speak about how everybody's going to go through some kind of significant loss or losses in their life. And it's perfectly natural, healthy, and human to have strong emotions around it and a range of emotions. So I just really want to address how important that it is about our humanity and our sense of self when it comes to trying to deal with difficult times. Having said that, in our groups, we always start the first night. We do a very rigorous registration process and intake. But on the first night, we always do a safeguard agreement, which basically is letting the group know that this is a safe place to be emotionally, that we're not here to judge each other's losses or compare, give advice. Confidentiality is absolutely important. Speak from the heart, no apologies for crying, and to speak in the I form in certain situations. So that really levels and creates a space where people open up quite quickly and honestly even though they've never met each other before. And that's what makes this such gratifying work for us. I'm also going to look at how grief affects us, not just in an emotional level, but on many levels and different dimensions. And we'll speak to that, and I'll have a screen share for you around that to think about and just reflect upon. And we'll look at, you know, in looking at ourselves in all these dimensions, it's not just kind of identifying what is where there's pain and where we're struggling and where we're confused. It's also looking at what are the antidotes to that, which are very, very simple things that can be very hard to do when we're not, you know, when we're going through difficult times. And it basically brings us back to self-care and routine and trying to find things in our life to create anchors and give us meaning or some kind of sense of self-expression. So I'm going to speak to that as well. That's kind of the grand finale, if you will. And hope leave you tonight feeling like you've either supplemented your understanding of loss and transition, or you have learned some new stuff that's great you can share with others or use for yourself. You know, I think back when I first started, I used to work as a personal coach, and then I worked as a career development practitioner. And in that work, I was working with people who lost their jobs either by circumstances or choice. And it was 3 weeks, it was intense, lots of wonderful tools, but the tool that I really, really appreciated as being able to deliver was helping to have people talk about transition and what losing a job can mean. So that is one of the reasons I'm doing this work. And the second was just all the different losses I experienced in my life. And I went to the bookstore back in 2003 and went to the self-help section and looked at all these books that said how you can get a relationship, how you can get a job, how you can get, you know, the life you've always dreamed of. And I asked, where are your books on loss? And they kind of looked at me like I was from another planet. And I thought, wow, we're all going to lose something or someone sometime. And that really emphasized my wanting to really learn about this work. And so I trained with the society, and I've been doing this work ever since. And that's enough about me. The first topic I'm going to bring you to are examples of loss and transitions, because that's what we're looking at tonight. So, and just kind of think, you know, I don't know if you're taking notes or if you're just going to reflect and listen, but you know, there's a context for change, and anytime we lose something or someone, there can be these strong feelings, and there can be a range of feelings. So grief isn't a word that describes a feeling. Grief is a word that describes many different feelings that people may have. I'll give you examples of some of the life events and transitions that we, you know, many people have or will or possibly will go through. Changes in relationship. That could be the death of a significant person. It could be abandonment. It could be divorce. It could be estrangement. It could be a child moving home or a child moving back home. Those changes, even if there's something that we kind of, you know, like, hey, my child's moving back home, that's great. We can still have grief around what we consider to be changes we make by choice and things that we might identify as being, this is a positive thing. And an example I'll give you around that is that when I left an apartment after 11 years living there and had such a great time and great stories, and I moved into a new place, and I kept driving back to the old place all the time, and I couldn't figure out why. I was grieving, you know, even though I had this new place to go to that I was really excited about, I was grieving the loss of my old neighbors, my old neighborhood, the familiarity of it, all the good stories I had. So there was that bittersweet feeling. I'm glad, you know, I'm sort of sad that I'm leaving this, but I'm going to this new place. And same with people that get married. They sort of go, I'm looking forward to getting married, but I'm not going to be single anymore, and I'm not going to have that same world. So grief isn't always about sadness. Sometimes it's just about, we're just trying to make sense of something that's not in our life anymore. The other type of life event that we can go through is a career change and job change. And I've been through few of those. And it can represent different things to different people, but it can be quite significant. It's a big part of our life. It could be the end of a project, starting a business, losing a business, bankruptcy. And that can also be create some difficult emotions for trying to make sense of this change and this transition. Material losses, losing possessions or losing a home, that can also be another example of a loss and transition. Changes in our surroundings. So perhaps, the moving, like I was saying, with the moving to a new place, or moving from one country to another country, a different environment. Those can also affect us in strong ways. And changes in our physical and mental selves, that being our lifestyle, our health, something's changed physically, a diagnosis or a condition, or just aging, those can all be significant for us. Changes in our mental health, addiction, aging once again, changes in our role in relationship to how we were before this condition, and the dreams and visions of self, the dreams and visions we had for ourselves and for others, possibly because of that. And these are all examples of different types of losses that we can experience. And what can come out on the other side of that are the needs that, what is grief? It can be yearning, it can be confusion, it can be anxiety, it can be sadness, it can be depression, it can be, I can't believe this is happening, but no, it's true. And so I refer to an ending and a beginning that's over here that we may not have identified or stepped into, the space in between being the neutral zone. And it can feel like that. We feel like we're kind of stopping and starting and not sure what we're going, and we feel like we're going forwards and backwards and around and around. And it's almost like putting your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time in a car. It's just like, I've got all these things going on, I'm not exactly sure what they are. And working with people with loss and transition is helping them just reflect and identify what they're feeling, and then, okay, giving them permission to know that that's very human and normal, and then looking at ways that, strategies, and small steps. There's no quick fix in working through loss and change. It's a process. I say that a lot to people because sometimes they just go, "Can you just make the pain go away? Can you, tell me what I'm supposed to do? Tell me what it means." And that's really each person's personal journey, is to explore that, and with the help of a counselor or with a grief group or anybody that has that compassion and care, to explore together, to find a sense of, well, how am I going to how am I going to get through this? I talk about it as a journey of there's a very popular, I guess you'd call him a thanatologist or educational therapist in grief and loss. His name is Alan Wilfelt. He talks about walking through the wilderness of grief, and I think that's a wonderful metaphor because it can feel like that. We just lost our way, we can't see the light, and it's about trying to find our way and find that light and that hope. The examples of needs that we may have, may lose and have not had met when we've gone through these changes are maybe connections. So this could be, definitely with relationship or career. That could be an example of something that you don't have that need met anymore. You don't have that sense of appreciation or respect or inclusion or security or support that you had before this loss, before this transition. Another need can have to do with just not being able to perform on the same level you used to perform on a physical level because of some health condition. And I'm working with someone right now. She was very, very active, and now she can't be as active because of what's going on for her health. And she's really grieving the loss of not, A, being able to do the activities that she enjoyed, and B, not having the connection that she did with others. So sometimes there's more than one need not being met. It can be several or multiples. A sense of safety, a sense of shelter can contribute to our sense of well-being as well. Play, joy, humor, if we're going through something difficult and we're not able to, we can just sometimes feel like we're just grieving and surviving or just trying to take care of business, and joy and humor might not be interjected in our world, and so there can be a grief of not feeling it and wanting to. Peace, sense of peace. Maybe there's anxieties happening underneath this. That sense of uncertainty can create anxiety. A lot of people at this time in the world are experiencing anxiety. That sense of we think we know the world, what's going to happen, we know what's going to do, what's going to be next, and that's just sort of like the rug's been pulled out from underneath us in that way. And I don't know that we could ever rely on the future being exactly the way we want it to, but I think when we got so much going on right now with what's going on around us, I think it creates another level of anxiety and confusion, and maybe even a little frustration and disappointment and hopelessness. Autonomy can be another need that's not being met. That sense of, I used to be able to do this, I can't do it now, I don't have the independence, I've had to move back with family, I don't have my space that I used to have. And that can be very significant in feeling that, oh, okay, I don't have this right now in my life, and it's something that I really needed and valued. And a sense of meaning. Human beings really need to have a sense of meaning, and I think sometimes we can spend our whole life trying to find it, but in some small ways in everyday's life we do find it. It could be just meaning in having a beautiful child or a dog or a cat that we love, or caring for our garden. It could be what we're doing in our work, or volunteering, or contributing, or making cookies for people, or any sense of self-expression that is meaningful for you. So, and that sense of competence maybe in whatever you were doing before. So you can see how much can go on when we're going through a loss that was significant, let alone if there's some multiple losses, which I find happens a lot to me. So never just one, it's always a couple. And I know that it happens to others as well. And going, well, I don't know which loss I'm supposed to be dealing with it right now. And I said, just whichever one is really up, in front of you right this moment, knowing that underneath that, we can all have these different losses and experiences, totally different. Underneath, what brings us together in our humanity are the different feelings that people are going to have around that. So, your loss and your loss and your loss and your loss are all significant to you, and they're all different. Yet underneath, when I talk about anger or yearning or confusion or anxiety or any of these words I'm putting out here tonight, that can bring people together, and that brings them together in grief work. They're going, oh, completely different experience you have, but boy, do I get what you're saying right now about, yeah, I'm really frustrated at how the medical profession dealt with this, or I'm really confused as to what's going on here in this part of my world. So that's my first little component, my first little topic. And so this is my opportunity to step back and see if there's any questions that have surfaced for you out there. I can't see you.
So I don't have any questions that have popped up yet. Maybe people are still digesting what has just come in. I know I'm digesting. And it's just really nice, to start this conversation for people who might not have seen the pandemic in a lens of grief. I'm grieving right now, and that's what's going on for me. And I'm sure other people have joined tonight because of other grievances and losses and experiences. So I'm glad you are all here.
And the good news is you're all anonymous. So if you feel you have a question, you don't really want anybody else to know that's what I call about the safety factor of being around this type of topic. And you're right. It's when I first got into this work and I said I do grief work, and people go, ew, that must be depressing or morbid. And I went, no, it's actually really rich and gratifying, because, as I said, people really, that when they come to a group or a person individually, they really want some help and they really want support. So at that point, they're ready to talk. Everybody in their own way and their own level of honesty, of course. There's no pressure from that. So, okay, no questions. I was just trying to take a break. Get some water.
I'll just go through some of the questions. It looks like Barb said, I missed the name of the grief educator, and kindly answered that. The answer is Alan Wolfelt.
Right.
And then we had somebody also just send a message that said, loss for me is also a change in schools and programs. This transition can be stressful.
Of course. And that would be, not that I like to put everything in tight little boxes, because there's no such thing. I'm just putting them in boxes tonight for the information factor. But that would be like the changes in surroundings and familiarity, and not having the same people that we used to know or see every day. So it's important to really we, kind of pay attention to what goes on for us when we're going through these changes, and not just on an emotional level, but just kind of sit with it. Where am I feeling it in my body? That's the mindfulness technique that I encourage people to experiment with. How's it affecting your ability to be in the world and other levels? And knowing that, sometimes it's crazy making. We just don't really sometimes know or understand what's going on for us. And that's why offering some of these examples and tools might help you plug into something that makes sense. And in the whole world of grief, we always say this is not prescriptive. Everybody's journey is different. Some people will look at something that is delivered and they'll go, no, it doesn't apply, but they'll come back with something else that worked for them. Great, we would bring that into this space. Some people will take away something and they'll go, wow, that really helped me. So something we do between our grief support groups is we offer something called heart work. And I'm going to invite everybody to consider that after tonight's session. Just something you take with you every week to just kind of practice some form of healing. No more questions out there?
Not yet,
okay.
But it's only the first chunk. We'll see if people want to jump in later on.
I hope so. But so what I want to share are, that I was talking about acknowledging the different types of life events and unmet needs that can occur. And I will have a handout for you for all this because, as I said, there's quite a bit of information in there. And I might not have tapped into an example that you can relate to, but hopefully when you look at the handout, the material, you might see something that does relate to you. Just a factor of not being able to get everything all packed into 1 hour. The next thing I want to speak about is that I mentioned we have different, several dimensions. And what I mean by that is we have our emotional dimension, and when people talk about going through difficult times, they tend to, that's usually where they're speaking from or where they're identifying with most. However, the whole body can hold, these feelings as well. And I'll give you some examples. Physical body. Our physical body can hold pain, emotional pain. It could show up as shortness of breath, or weight loss or weight gain, oversleeping, undersleeping, different, restlessness, something we call waves of grief, where people just feel like they're just kind of doing something, and then all of a sudden this wave hits them, and comes out of the blue, and they don't know what just hit them. Sensory overload would be something that I can identify with when I've gone through difficult times. I just want to shut myself into my little space, and I don't, a leaf blower will drive me over the edge if I'm not feeling, in my sense of being right now with whatever's going on. The other dimension is the social self. Everyone has a different level of an energy level of how much socializing they like and can tolerate in their life, but it's a chance to explore how are these events, these losses, these transitions, have they affected your social connections? So it could be feeling maybe people are stepping away from you because you're going through something difficult and they're awkward, they don't know what to say or do. Or you could, in that, you might feel a sense of abandonment. It could be feeling isolated because you've been dealing with a health issue and you can't really do what you used to do before. So those are, as human beings, we all need to have some social connections. So it's a chance to go, wow, has that been affecting me too? And this is what I refer to as the secondary. There's kind of these multiple layers. There's the primary loss, whatever that is. I'll use the example of losing a job. So there, I lost a job. So yeah, I lost income. But on the other levels of loss around it for me it was my sense of purpose. And this is the true story. My dream job was a sense of purpose. I had my dream team. So it was my connection. And it was my sense of feeling really competent and capable. So there's all these different levels from losing this career that affected me. And it took 2 years or more for me to really let it go. It let me go. It went out of business. But it took up to 2 years to really find my grounding of what I needed to do. I mean, I was working with other things, but nothing was clicking in the same way. And I realized how that area of work really filled so many needs for me and so many values. And to have, you know, it not be there in my life, it took that amount of time of healing to really work through it all and know, okay, well, the good news is I had my dream job for 12 years. Not everybody can say that. And I learned a lot, and I had a lot of wonderful experiences there. So that's an example of how one event can really open up all these different layers. There's understandably the emotional, the shock that can come with different changes in our life, numbness, anger, guilt, pining, emptiness. There can be hurt, loneliness, regrets. The human condition is so rich with different emotions, and you know, to kind of being able to identify a specific one can help us a little bit more directly work on how to cope and heal through that difficult emotion. On the other side, there can be hopefulness. There can be other things going on. It's not necessarily all these responses are, you know, uncomfortable. There can be other responses that are comfortable. And sometimes we can pick out a comfortable response and going, oh, I'm feeling relieved that I don't have to do this anymore, see that person anymore. And then guilt moves in and goes, oh, I can't believe I just said that. I feel relieved. So it's interesting how we can step into an emotion and then go, oh, wait a sec, I've been feeling bad, and then I feel good for a little bit, and then I go and correct myself for feeling good and feel guilty again or feel bad about it. So that's the other side of being complex, rich human beings. We're basically a rainbow of different emotions. There's the mental dimension, and examples of that would be feeling disorganized, possibly for whatever's going on, the sense of restlessness that we can go through when we're going through different losses, routines, become chore, be absent-minded, and you know, just kind of going, what am I doing here? So, which takes me into the spiritual, and that's its own meaning for everybody. But that sense of what's going on, what's the point of all this, what's the meaning behind this event that's happened in my life that's so been so difficult to manage. And this is where, and asking questions is good. This is where we get, when we start to reflect and become aware and ask questions to sort of provoke that awareness, then we have a chance to do something with it. If we were kind of sitting in a fog and we haven't really asked the questions, then it's harder to figure out, to find a way to manage it. So asking questions like, what's the point? What's going on in my life? What are my values and priorities right now? You know, if you believed in God, maybe you don't, you know, challenge your faith. And maybe, you know, some people didn't believe in something and then they do. And so events in our life, depending on how significant it is for you, really impact our sense of who am I in this world and what am I doing in this world? And that's a great question. We don't always know the answers, but I think in leaning into the question and the questions about that, we have an opportunity to explore and to experiment with different ways of trying to find purpose and meaning. Like I was mentioning before, when I lost my dream job, I found my purpose and meaning. I don't do this full time, but it came out of that because I was grieving so much. And it makes so much sense to be able to do this work. So those are examples of responses to loss. And I'm just going to create a little space here so I can get a little sip of my water if there's any thoughts or questions that anybody has.
Nothing at the moment. I did have a question come in regarding some resources, but I think maybe we can elaborate on that towards the end in terms of people wanting to actually seek grief support in person or additional resources aside from tonight's presentation. So.
Okay, I do have some I was going to email out that are, you know, other organizations and virtual websites. I might even have some books to suggest as well, because like I said, everybody's coming here for different reasons. So it's a pretty broad, broad, you know, level of losses out there. So.
Chris, I'll ask a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do. Please do. I really need a little break, just a little bit of water.
Sure, yeah. Oh, well, first I'll read Barb's question that came through. Barb asks, would you say our emotional and mental grief is overwhelmingly strong during this pandemic?
For some people, yes, it is. I can't speak for everybody. I know some people where this event has not changed their life at all. They've, you know, almost nothing's changed in their life for them. And I know other people where it's changed their life dramatically. So, and I'm in between. So there's, you know, it's really, you know, talking to each person, what is that person experiencing? Certainly isn't providing a lot of comfort. I would say everybody, you know, a lot of people I speak would say they're just uncomfortable all the time, and maybe a little frustrated, and sometimes a little bit, you know, anxious. But each person, depending on where they are in their life, if they were working or not working or staying at home with children, or if they were retired, each person seems to have their own level of, you know, whether they're dealing with strong feelings or not. So.
I have another question for you, Chris. Someone noted that they're currently faced with losing their mother to Parkinson's, but it's a very slow process. Wondering if you have any suggestions for dealing with a protracted loss, I guess something lasting more long term.
Okay, so I'm going to, one of my topics that I'm going to speak about next actually is about anticipatory grief and ambiguous loss. So maybe in there might be something that'll be a helpful tool.
Okay, thanks. And I think another question popped up too. Let's see. So, okay, wait, you took one from Barb, and did you see another one come up?
Yeah, I saw the one in the Q&A. I can read it if you want, Pascal.
Okay.
So we had a question. I'd like to ask about the idea that we don't judge or compare loss. Is loss due to suicide or loss of a child not considered complex grief that is unique and profound challenge, that has unique and profound challenges?
Absolutely. Tough question and an important one. So in my grief groups, we can have a person who's lost somebody to cancer, somebody who's lost somebody to an overdose, someone who's lost somebody to suicide, or homicide. Now, there are specific groups for specific losses, because ours being kind of all kinds and all kinds of relationships, some people might go, no, I don't know that I fit here. So they would go to a specific group to speak to that. What I always say on the first night is, if you break your leg in a car accident, or you break your leg driving, you know, or skiing, the pain is pain is pain. And it really depends on the person that's having the experience of loss and their attachment to whoever or whatever it was. I know somebody who lost their dad and did not really go through much grief. Okay. He lost somebody else that wasn't his father, wasn't a, you know, was some other person, and really had significant and profound feelings around it. So it's really, you can't say that all people are going to have the same level of that, and they are complex. Certain things can be complex, but it depends on the relationship and it depends on that person. So there's no great cookie cutter approach to this. It really is each person. I was really, really strongly attached to this person, but somebody else, I've had two people, one of my grief groups, who and two people in the same grief group who were in the group because they lost a parent, but they both had very complicated, estranged relationships with that parent. And they felt we really had to emphasize there's no judgment here if you want to say that you're angry at this parent for abandoning you or abusing you. And I know that there's other people that struggled with that in the group. You know, they're going, how could you say that about a parent? But that's their parent, that's their experience. So I'm not sure if that answers the question that came up, hopefully on some level. Okay. Yeah, we can't compare, and I know that people have done that. They said, oh, nothing worse than losing a child, there's nothing worse than losing a spouse, there's nothing worse than, no, that's the safeguard we say, so you can't compare. It's the griever makes the decision how important that relationship was and how important that loss. Nobody else can do that. Okay?
Chris, we had one other question that came in through the chat, and it was, would you say there is a positive loss or a positive grief?
I don't consider grief negative or positive, first of all. I think it's just a human emotion. Nothing's good or bad. It's what we do with it. So anger is not negative or positive. It's what we do with it. Anger can be negative or do something destructive, and can be positive. We're going to use that anger and move it around and push it, maybe apply it to something like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers or something like that. Same with grief. It's not negative or positive, but I did kind of refer earlier to, we can have a loss that we might have chosen and feel, when I used the loss example of somebody getting married and they're going, I'm so excited about getting married. This is a positive experience, positive change, but I'm grieving the loss of my single life. I'm grieving the loss of not being able to just go out with my friends all the time, and I have to, now I have to consult with my partner. And so in that respect, we can grieve something that we even wanted to lose, because we still have an attachment to it. And it's like I did with my apartment. I wanted to get my own condo, I wanted my own place, but I didn't have my own apartment anymore. And so there was a little bit of sadness about it. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay. I'm kind of looking at the chat windows as well too. So, okay. Oh, here comes a nice long one. I'm seeing a very long question there. You see it, Pascal?
Did you want me to read it aloud, or or is there a piece of this that you would think might be addressed later on in the presentation?
Oh, okay. Expected. Well, I see at the end of the question here, at the end of all of that, the question is there information about expected and unexpected grief? And that's what I'm going to go into now, actually. So good timing.
Okay, so hopefully this question that you've provided can kind of be addressed in this next portion here. If not, maybe we can come back to it in the second window here when we have another chance.
You can see why it takes 3 full days from 9 to 4 to do a grief education workshop. And I'm trying to put as much into one little hour as possible, and hopefully, provide enough for people to, get a little bit more information. So what I'll speak to right now is something called ambiguous loss. And ambiguous loss represents when the person, there's two kinds. When the person is physically present, but psychologically absent. So in the case of those with maybe brain injuries and dementia, they've got this person in front of them that they know, and they're seeing them, yet on a cognitive level, this person is not present. And this can be quite difficult. It's extremely difficult. And then another kind is when the person is mentally or emotionally present, but physically absent. And that would be in the case of missing persons. So we got them in ourselves, but they're missing. We don't know where they are, or people that go to war that go missing in action. So it's ambiguous because we don't have the person physically and emotionally, mentally in front of us. And that can bring up strong feelings. And I'm going to kind of partnering ambiguous loss with anticipatory grief together, because the coping tools I have are the same for both. And actually they're quite the same for a lot of different things. The anticipatory grief is when you have not, you know something's coming, you know you're going to lose something or somebody, and you're anticipating that. And that can bring up a lot of, you know, it takes a lot of energy sometimes to be in that place. And you know it's coming, and you might just be dealing with business at hand, yet and you may not have a chance to really go to the feelings because maybe you're taking care of somebody, because of that, and you know, that potential, that person, you know, they're not going to be around and you're going to lose them. So for some people, and it's different for everybody, some people do work out through a lot of stuff with that, on that, you know, on that place, and some people don't. They don't find they have a chance to work it out, and that's when they might see a counselor or a grief worker for, you know, being on the other side of that. But some people do reach out when they know they're going to lose somebody and will seek help with a counselor. And as grief workers, or as a grief worker for me, and what I do at the society, we're not counselors. We're not there to do psychotherapy or counsel. We're basically there to provide a safe space for people to talk about what's going on for them, and to offer examples and different models of how we might be going through these difficult times and different coping strategies. So I mentioned before that we can sometimes have two conflicting emotions simultaneously, like feeling relief and guilt. And we can have ambivalent and conflicting feelings when we're going through transition and loss, and when certainly there are multiple things going on. And the part sometimes we need to go to, if we can, is to get grounded in, there are so many things beyond our control. And I know as human beings, we like to have control. We like to know something's in my control. And I'm going to give you some examples of what you can take care of that way. But part of when we're going through other changes, that we got to kind of go, I can't control everything that's happening in life right now. And how do I find a sense of how do I get grounded in all this? How do I feel that there is something that for me, and I can deal with these situations right now, so that we don't feel like we're twirling around in the wind. So these aren't, you know, these are the gems I'm going to share with you, and you probably heard them before, but be patient. Be patient with, you know, trying to live each day as it comes. Especially now, I don't think we can really jump into the future too quickly right now. It's good to try and have something, you know, something to, you know, what I call having something to look forward to. I always try and have something every week to look forward to, whether it's meeting up with a friend or doing something that I really enjoy. So that would be my little idea of future planning. And everything else, I just try to take one day at a time. And that's the phrase that's been used in a lot of different areas. Spend time, you know, just doing different things for yourself. And I'm going to have a nice little sheet, nice double sheet for you, around how you can nourish your dimensions. I mentioned those 6 dimensions, and there's ways of nourishing them, and they can be really simple, like just writing or gardening or baking or cooking, or, you know, just walking around in the fresh air in a park, just to, you know, allow yourself to feed and nourish all of you. It's helpful to, if in the case of ambiguous and anticipatory loss, if there's other people that in your family or community, that you can kind of find a dialogue around what's going on, so that you're supporting each other in some way, on maybe, you know, having that communication openly and honestly about what is going on for you, how you're you know, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what are the things that are important to each individual person and each member, and also as a group, to know and understand each other's, you know, values as well, what's going on for them. That can help in a situation with the ambiguous and the anticipatory loss. And trying to find ways, you know, even sharing stories, if that's something that you're inclined to do, or, you know, being in the case of dealing with somebody that's got an illness, is just being honest with them and being with them, and, you know, just trying to create that sense of connection and hearing what they have to say and what's going on for them. And those are some of the tools for ambiguous and anticipatory grief. Some other things, like, as I said, I'm going to provide for you are a little bit more in depth, but it's a variation of the theme. It's really about trying to find connection with people that we care about, having that open communication, trying to support each other. You know, we can't deal with all these things and these changes by ourselves. I tried to do that for way too long. And at 28, I crashed and burned because I thought I could handle all this stuff. And I was, you know, I basically had to reach out for help. I was just like, it was out of control. I couldn't find my sense of self or my center. And now we have more tools than we did, you know, 60 years ago, and more people that are open to having these conversations and more resources. Not all of them apply to everybody. We're still a little bit, there's still a bit of a dearth of having all, you know, a resource for every single solitary person's situation. But we're getting, I said we think we've done much more advancement in that in the last 12, 15 years. So the good news. And if, you know, and if everybody goes out there and kind of pays attention to what what brought you together tonight, that's just kind of spreading the word in its own way too. And we talk about the language of grief in our groups, and in everything I do, is that sometimes the things that people say and do and don't say and do, and what we say and do and don't say and do, can be helpful or not helpful. And I think when we're dealing with loss and transition, we need to find the helpful words inside of ourselves. We need to be with people who have helpful things to contribute. And the ones that don't, maybe we need to pull back a little bit, because that's kind of, it's compromising our ability to heal and to make sense and work on what we need to do. And that's not easy to do sometimes. Sometimes that person can be right in your own home and you're going, you know, what do you do? How do you tell your person next to you to, you know, if they're not helping? But it's first step of trying to take some ownership for what's going on for you. Something, I'm just looking at my time here. Okay, 7:52. Couple more things I'm gonna talk about, and then I'm gonna leave you with the diagram and some self-care toolkit. Disenfranchised grief, that is another form of grief that we may experience. And what that means is that the relationship with whomever we were with was not recognized, or the loss is not recognized, or the griever is not recognized. And that can come about definitely in a support group when everybody's, you know, when people are talking about death, because, you know, people might judge and say, well, how can you be grieving the loss of, you know, your social worker? Well, that's not a family member, but once again, the griever gets to make that decision. And there's a lot of disenfranchised grief going on out there. And when I work with people who have non-death related losses, they tend to feel judged. They feel that their loss isn't, you know, you're grieving the loss of your health. It's not like somebody died. Doesn't matter. Loss is a loss. It means that something or someone has been taken away out of our life, and we had strong attachment to them or it, and the feelings that come out of that. So you know, being in that place of disenfranchised grief, people sit in silence with their pain. They may not know that they're even grieving. They just know they're struggling. And some of those strong emotions I mentioned earlier, like feeling this, you know, abandoned and people pulling away or saying the so-called wrong thing, that will isolate them even more and make them feel less whole. And this is really what healing is about. It's the word, it comes from, you know, an ancient word meaning to make whole. And that's what we invite people to do in grief work. Another example of grieving styles, sometimes I will work with somebody who says that somebody in their world or their family, maybe they both have, they lost the same, you know, I lost the father and you lost the brother. And they might compare and say, hey, my brother isn't grieving properly. So I want to emphasize there is no right way to grieve. There is different and unique grieving styles. And once again, I'm kind of categorizing them, and nothing is black or white. But an example of grieving style is intuitive. And the intuitive people are the ones that usually show up in support groups. They want to talk about it. They want to express themselves. They want to explore, and they don't mind, you know, speaking about it and expressing themselves about it. Instrumental grievers, on the other hand, don't necessarily want to go and talk about people. They might go down to the basement and do some work in the workshop, or they might go out and get a bunch of books to learn and read about it more. So they're more focused on thinking and doing than exploring and expressing. And then there's the blended style. Some, you know, some people are a little bit of both, and that would be where I would say I am. I tend to go do the stuff, get the information, go, you know, kind of try and work it all out inside myself, and then, and not all times will I, but there are times when I will walk forward and tell, not always. So neither one is right or wrong, and that's something important to bring up in this, because once again, people can compare, and that's not helpful. I'm going to share something with you on the screen to take the focus off of me for a few minutes. So, okay, this went up into super large. I'm going to bring it down a few notches. This, I was mentioning the 6 dimensions. These are examples of the 6 dimensions and how they all interlock. And it's a chance to reflect, you know, the emotional self is going to connect with all of ourselves, and all of ourselves kind of, you know, can connect. You can move those circles around, is basically what I'm saying, like a spirograph. And it's a chance, it's going to give you a minute or two to just look through those dimensions and identify which one of them you might, you know, feel needs a little bit of nourishment. Maybe, you know, you feel like you haven't really allowed yourself to be sad, or allowed yourself to feel hopeful, or moved, or been eating well, or maybe you've been feeling really struggling with your mental abilities and suspecting too much of yourself. You're trying to read a whole book instead of just maybe reading magazines with lots of pictures and little text. Creative, this creative self, something you do just for you, and you don't have to have results, or you just do it because you enjoy it. And then the social. So I'm just going to not talk for a minute and let you reflect on that diagram. And just you reflect on which area or areas you feel you need to attend to. Okay, I'm mindful of the time and winding up, and I just want to wind up with a couple of things. One is, and this will be a handout that you're gonna get as well, and just to sort of supplement what I just showed you, and if you were maybe struggling with how you could nourish those dimensions, I have a cheat sheet for you. I actually have 2. But you know, some of it's really simple, straightforward, but it's things that we sometimes don't do when we're struggling. We, you know, just trying to eat right, sleep, try to get a night, you know, good sleep, some fresh air, create a routine. This is one of the things I've been mentioning to a lot of people right now during this time of uncertainty, is try to create a little routine for yourself. That's a bit, you know, that is that you can do, that you can, you know, don't overdo a routine. Don't go crazy, but something that's manageable. Sometimes just changing or something in for one of our senses. So for example, maybe putting on a different color of clothing, or putting on a scented candle, or putting on music, or something that just kind of speaks to one of your senses, or the one that's strongest for you, that you can, it just gives you a little bit of relief. Movement is always helpful, even if you're in pain. I had fibromyalgia and it hurt like crazy, but I went for a walk around the block every day until I could do 2 blocks and then 3 blocks. So it's, it can, or yoga or swimming if you have body pain. Reaching out to others, however that may be, through phone, email, and now we have this virtual platform. finding time to play. And that can be something simple as an instrument, a cat, a dog, a child, just to go to that place of playfulness that can just kind of get us out of our difficult, our difficult experience. Always have a special place that you can go to, whether it's in your home or outside. Could be a park. My special place in my home is my bed. I love my bed. Be aware of your expectations. Find something you can control the heck out of it. It can be really simple. Like for me, I love writing. So I'll write and just write, and then I'll doodle. And sometimes this isn't always easy to do at the time. And it's certainly not anything I expect anybody to do when they're right in that so-called neutral zone. But sometimes just identifying what the lessons might be coming out of this, or the learning. We've sort of heard in the general sense, the learning for many people with this COVID is that they're learning about, well, maybe I've been working too hard, or I haven't spent enough time with my family, or spent enough time in nature. So there can be little positive outcomes inside of that difficult times, and where we can find some meaning and reconstruct, what's our healing journey. And so on that same kind of theme, I invite you to find some heart work for yourself. And that's something that you could practice once a week or twice a week or every day, whatever your inclination is. It could be journaling if you're inclined to write. It could be, I like to plunk on my little piano. I don't play very well, and I put the headphones on so no one else can hear me, but it just gives me a little relief each day. It just makes me feel, connected to the percussiveness of the keyboard. It could be for some, it could be walking. It could be lighting a candle and just reflecting on things in your life. Little rituals, little grounding techniques, little forms of expression. And once again, maybe it's through gardening, or maybe it's through your yoga, or through cooking. I know people that get therapy from cooking and cooking for others. So that's what I want to leave you with, is that those little things you can do for yourself every day. And as I said, I've got a cheat sheet for you, or at least little things you can do for yourself along the way. And without judgment, if you can't do it, without judgment that you feel that you're doing it right. Because there is no right way to grieve. There also is no timeline. That's another thing I wanted to say before we wind up tonight. So we're at 8:02. I've gone overboard. Sorry, Pascal. Sorry, Talia.
No worries. They're here for you, not me. So, okay, what I am going to do, just so we still have everyone in attendance, I'm going to quickly just put out feedback for the information you've already received tonight. If you could just click on the link for the feedback form, it's only a couple minutes, if that. And then there were some questions that came up during the last chunk of the presentation, so hopefully we can address that with everyone too. So hang on one second here. So hopefully now everyone has seen a link come up. If you could click on that link, it will bring you to a separate page. If you could just fill that out quickly, and then we can go through the questions that came up, or if there's additional questions or comments now that we're wrapping up.
Pascal, do we want to go through any of the questions as people are kind of working their way through the survey, or wait for a minute?
I'm not sure. Is it distracting for people if we start responding to questions that came through earlier? Did you want to take as long as they come back to us at some point, you can leave the survey to the side and send it after the presentation if you'd like. it's just helpful for us to know what you thought of this and then how we can do other presentations. So yeah, why don't we, if no one has any objections, we can start going through some of the questions that came up.
Okay. I just wanted to scroll back up to a question that we got a bit ago, and it was specifically around a resource, Chris. It sounds like it's a sheet that's called Expectations, and it was really about expected and unexpected grief reactions and kind of a general timeline of what you might expect around those. So I don't know if that's something that you're familiar with or have heard of, and I think the person was wondering if there's like they had received this sheet as a resource, and they were wondering if that is still something that is available, if there are newer versions of it.
I don't have that in my material. It could have been something before my time. I guess I can address the timeline part. And I used an example of the Greeks had two terms for time. I'm getting abstract, I know. But experiencing grief and loss, it can be abstract, and sometimes we need to put it into a metaphor and an analogy to kind of get our head around it. But the Greeks had two terms for time, and one was chronos and one was kairos. And chronos represents tick-tock time, like when we measure a minute and an hour and a day and a year, and that's what we kind of live by. And it's that tick-tock time that sometimes people start to go to when they're talking about going through grief and loss. They're going, and 6 months went by, or you heard on the news, oh, they're grieving only after, I'm still grieving after 3 months. I'm going, who said 3 months was not a long time? Who's giving you these timelines? So chronos time is good for, getting to work on time and catching a train, but you don't use it in grief work. And the other term was kairos, and I'm kind of twisting it around a bit to kind of suit what I'm going to say. But kairos is what the psychological experience, or the experience we're having in a certain time. So let's say you call 911 because it's an emergency and it took them forever to get there, but it literally only took them 5 minutes. Time slowed down because of the experience, the psychological relationship to that experience. And then conversely, we can be enrolled with friends or some kind of activity we're engrossed in and focus on, and the time flies by. So time does not go slow or fast depending on us, but we can have that relationship with it. So when I talk to people about grief, I say, don't measure it. It just can't be measured in chronological time. It's measured in reflecting and applying different tools, in looking back at where you've been. And that's one of the powerful things about the support group. We see the people on the first night, and then we see them on the 6th, and everybody says they see a shift. But sometimes the people themselves don't see the shift. So that's why it's important to have some kind of feedback, if you will, to get a sense of what might be shifting. The expectations and the unexpected, that I'm sorry, I don't have particular material on that. I will look it up and see if I have something close that might relate to that, though. I will do that.
Thanks, Chris. There was okay, so I'm gonna go back and forth between the chat and the Q&A that came through. So I think this kind of ties into the whole time situation. This comment or question was, how would you go about future planning while there are so many restrictions on where we can and cannot go currently, especially for those who may not do so well with the digital interaction? So I think that was more of like the coping piece, perhaps, that we were referencing to, making plans on a weekly basis, but there's still so much uncertainty and restrictions on places we can physically be right now. So that is a challenge. That is the reality of what we're struggling with right now.
Right, and I guess the first thing I can say to that is that we're not alone. Nobody's alone with that. We're all trying to find a way to, have a future. And I mentioned earlier that, make little plans, but don't get attached to them, which is easier said than done sometimes. But, it's like, even, like I said, looking forward to something each week. I try to make a plan to do that. But sometimes by the time I get to that day, I don't want to go out to see my good friend because I'm really tired. So it's kind of, trying to find that place in between where can we try to create a plan, where can we plug into that might relate to our way of being in the world, because yeah, here we are in a virtual world. This is certainly not my comfort zone. And I'm trying to find a way to work it into my life, but I still need to know that I can see certain people or talk to them on the phone or go to my painting class or little simple things like that. But yeah, I think it, and it depends what I think a lot of people's dreams feel like they're on hold right now, are their future plans. I hear it every day from people. I work in a store and the customers talk about, well, my trip's gone and this is gone and that's gone. And so it's about maybe, consider making a plan, but don't get attached to it, but maybe have a plan B. So what, if that doesn't work, maybe what would be plan B that might be sort of satisfy that same value or that same need or that same, thing that we're looking forward to. I know I don't have the best answer because I'm in the same place with it right now too, right? I'm planning to have support groups this fall. The churches have let us, back in, but I don't know what it's going to look like when, by the day before, who, could lock down again. So we've got to think of a plan B, which, I haven't thought of yet.
So maybe also that self-compassion piece is that if we had a plan in place and we wanted that control for that week, if it doesn't work out as we anticipated or we weren't in the mood for it to actually happen, like going out to physically hang out with a friend or family member, then that's okay. That this is a weird, challenging time, and let's see if there's something else that can help us cope with this.
Yeah, I agree.
I have another one from the actual chat window. What if people are anticipating to grieve for you, as in you're on the other side? So
other side of what?
I don't know. That was the end of the question. I don't know if this person means instead of like maybe someone else is taking on the grief for the other person, because maybe a member or a friend or someone is in the process of passing, or there might be an expected loss and maybe someone else is stepping into the process. I'm not too sure. If you could elaborate on that question.
Yeah, I think I need a bit more information. What I don't want to assume what the other side means. I just want
to. And then on another side, I had someone provide a comment. Just gonna pull that up that I set aside. It was that they noted that grief is really a wide topic, but from their experience during this pandemic, this person lost their dad and their mother-in-law. So unfortunately, this individual and their husband were not able to pay their last respect to this person, the people they lost, but they really felt sad for the loss, and they tried to put a positive, I guess, spin on it, looking back and counting the blessings and experiences, the years that they had shared with those people in their lives, and cherish the good memories. It may help people relieve some of their loneliness too by looking at it that way.
That sounds like a great idea. I talk about trying to find gratitude in, even the darkest times, and try to find our blessings and try to find, some light. And a lot of people are struggling because they can't connect with people that have died. And so maybe it's connecting with their photos, or maybe it's connecting with their music, or maybe this is where the power of ritual can be really helpful and healing for people, putting on a candle and the music and just allowing themselves to think about that person and what they meant to them in their life. Because, yes, we didn't have that physical experience, but this person is important, so we can have the emotional experience and hold them in our heart and find a connection through something, some form of ritual. And gratitude, it's not always easy. Some days you just don't feel grateful about anything, but if it's just one little thing that, we can try to access, that can also help with trying to, cope with all of this. That's, there's so much negativity right now in the world. I have to really reduce my news watching time now. So I have a couple things I link up to. One is called CNN's Good News. One is called KarmaTube, and one is called Grateful Living Network. And I can provide those emails if people, or the links if people like, but it just gives me a chance to go to the other to that place. I got enough of that today. I want to go to this place and hear about and be part of a community that's talking about other things that are going on. And that gives me a little bit of hope and faith in humanity and that sense of, oh, there is still good stuff happening. I might not be doing it, but there are people doing it and I get a chance to witness it.
I'm with you there. I try to sprinkle in a little bit of the silver lining through any kind of feeds or advertisements or anything that can brighten my day during these challenging times. I had a response regarding the initial question, a follow-up, so I'm just going to read that. So this individual said, people are worried for you, as in they're expecting you to pass. So I guess it's an anticipation of grief from other people to this individual.
And does this person have a diagnosis, or is just people around them in general just feeling that way?
That I don't know.
Sorry,
maybe
I got more questions than answers. Well, if it's a diagnosis, that's one thing. If it's you're aging and people are worrying about you getting older, my 93-year-old mother, I'm kind of, she has no diagnosis. So, so why these people might be worrying because they care, but are they pouring that energy onto you is the question. And if so, that might not be helpful. That's the example of helpful, not helpful again. Sometimes you have to have that conversation and just say, I appreciate that you care about me and I appreciate that you're worried about me, or you appreciate that you're sad that I'm going to be gone someday. And I want you to really hang out with me now while I'm alive or while I'm here. And let's really hang out with good times we've had or the good times we can have. This is about that being present thing again, because we don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. And so, especially with people we care about, it's a chance to really be honest and communicate with them and show how you feel and let them know what you need.
Yeah, this person confirmed it is a diagnosis, so maybe it is feeling a little bit more rushed, but I think, as you've highlighted, any of us, tomorrow could be our last day. So if we can just enjoy, regardless diagnosis or not, this time that we have, right? Because we could all just be worrying about what tomorrow, the next day, the next week, regardless. So it's challenging.
It is very challenging. I completely appreciate how people can feel that way. But I think it's kind of, there was the book, the movie Tuesdays with Morrie. That's a good read for about that. And just showing up with somebody when they're dying and getting their stories. And so maybe it's a chance to just go to that place. Let's share stories. I'll share you my stories of life. You share your stories and be with that present and person in present time and try to ask them to try to manage their grief in losing you. But it means they care too. But if it's affecting you, then it's about creating some boundaries, as hard as that sometimes is.
There were some more comments and maybe another question further up. Let me just go back there. I had someone else ask, are there any more dimensions that are important than the 6 that were displayed this evening?
Well, there possibly could. I'd have to think about that a little bit more. There was only 5 when I originally had this model, and I put a 6th one in because I felt the creative dimension was lacking. But some people might, want to check in with themselves, like something I call a psychic dimension. Sometimes we can feel that we're psychically being affected by others in our world, and it's not an emotional thing. It's just the people that are sensitive in certain ways might just pick up on other people's energy on a psychic level, so that you could possibly explore that as another dimension.
I have a comment from another individual. I have gone through most of everything that Chris has gone through, plus some. This has been helpful. I think I'm on the right track in dealing with the current grief loss transition in the best way possible. I've made some notes as Chris spoke. I've enjoyed this very much. It has guided me as to what I will be faced with going forward and how to guide our son with the losses he will be faced with. He's a tough cookie to guide also. Thanks. And the individual signed off. So.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Have another one here that I haven't read through yet. Let me just take a look. So this individual was commenting on some of the resources. So what to say and what not to say sheets for others are great. How to grieve, accept, practical support. How compassion is not pity, as well as complicated grief are all great topics. Peer support is very powerful. Just follow your protocol safely. You're the person dying. How do you work with those experiences? Anticipatory grief. Those experiencing the anticipatory grief if you're the one dying. So I guess a similar.
I think Pascal, that person was anticipating the or interpreting the question from before.
Right.
Trying to clarify.
Any other comments or questions that you noted, Talia? Oh, this individual said that they agree with you, Chris, on one of your last comments, that they always looked at their dad's photo before they went to sleep since the day he passed away.
Yeah, and that's an example of a ritual, a practice that is heartfelt, right?
I think the only other one, Pascal, is the one that came in right at the beginning that we said we'd touch on at the end, just around the resources.
Yeah, so I think this person had, I think I lost the bubble. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So this person asked, where do you get help in Vancouver? Lost son, last member of family 2018 and getting worse. Been to grief groups, counseling, psychologists, and now mental health team, but no one takes my loss and depth of pain seriously.
Oh my.
Yeah.
And those would all be things that I would suggest, and maybe those particular people didn't have training in grief. There's a great organization called the BC Bereavement Helpline. I don't have their information in front of me, but will offer that as well as a resource. And we've worked with them in different ways over the years. And they are a nonprofit as well. They're portal to all the resources in BC, and they're right on top of things. And they also were holding physical groups for people that have lost somebody by some specific way. But they also have people in their space that, pick up the phone and talk to you and find out a little bit more about what exactly you need. So maybe they can help with this person to source out the right resource for them. Yeah, because you got to find the right counselor, you got to find the right group. It's not always easy.
Any other comments or questions that I have not addressed? Yes, people are looking forward to those links that you'll be sending out afterwards, so I can email everyone who has joined us this evening. And we have a comment that, yes, love CNN, good news. Maybe that can be included too in the email, some of the uplifting links that we can check out.
Sure. Yeah, I'm writing all this down, all these links and handouts that I will find. And I will email them to you.
Great, thanks. And okay, so I'm just gonna copy this and make sure it goes out to everyone here. Oh, yes. Looks like, okay, hang on a sec here. I just wanna make sure this is going out to all the, it's the bereavement information. Okay.
Oh, you brought up the number. Wow, thank you.
Yeah, it was actually Anne, but it came to us, the panelists, so I want to make sure everyone saw it on the screen.
Thanks, Anne.
Great.
Yeah, 738, yeah. They're wonderful people there. Wonderful people.
Not seeing anything else pop up. If I missed something from earlier, please just write a quick note again, and we can try and address that here, or if there's any other comments about tonight's presentation.
Maybe they've all headed out for dinner.
Yeah.
We still have 20 people here.
Oh, we do? Okay.
This is the email address that Anne has provided. Hang on one sec. And I think everyone saw that one because that was addressed to the whole group here.
Welcome.
And thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Yeah, it's such a spectrum of different things that we could address in this evening. There's so many different experiences of loss and grief. So I think this was a nice first step here in the Richmond community and elsewhere, everyone who joined us virtually, to start talking about it and doing some self-reflection and thinking about even just the diagram that you gave us there about how are we taking care of ourselves in the different ways that are helping this process.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, yeah, we can't judge, it's different for everyone, right? So.
Yeah, and I see that last comment about role, and that is in one of my categories as well. The change of our role, our identity can be really difficult. Like, who am I without this person? Who am I without this job? Who am I without my health? You know, here's me, here's the other, and now it's gone, and we can feel just so impaired with that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Any last comments or questions? Okay. One from Barb. Thank you. Yes, we just had someone saying thanks for the presentation. Looking forward to more virtual sessions in the future. Yeah, who knows how many more we'll be doing virtually like this. Thank you for connecting this way, everyone, tonight. I know that for myself, it's always a bit of a challenge and a little bit different coming into a space like this, especially with a topic like this too, right? Where it'd be nice to have the comfort of everyone being in the shared environment, but at least you can do it in your sweatpants from home.
Yeah, I've never had 30 people in my living room before.
For sure. I also just wanted to say thank you to Pascal, because I'm the person here who gets to say thank you for all of the organizing and all the work that you did into bringing this together and for facilitating and moderating this evening. You did an amazing job. We appreciate
Thank you. My pleasure. It was a wonderful topic to bring to light, and I think as we've all witnessed, it's something that we all can relate to. We've all had some loss in our life, and so knowing how to navigate it and just being able to share our experiences and talk about it is always just a nice step to start this process and working through it. Thanks, Anne. So if no one else has any questions or comments tonight, what I will do is send out all the resources from Chris that she'll be emailing me. And I think on the Eventbrite, there was links to all of our societies and organizations. I don't know how long that's going to stand up now that the event is officially over, but I can send those links out as well if you'd like to know more about us or contact anyone that was a part of bringing this event together. But other than that, I can let everyone go for the evening, and thanks so much for signing on and joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Talia. Thanks, Pascal. Thanks to all our panelists and attendees. Appreciate it.
And I will keep this recording and post it probably to our Pathways Clubhouse website. So stay tuned for that coming available. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. I'll talk to you through email, Pascal.
Yes, we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Good
Bye
night.
for now. Good night.